Let's start building your teams. Let's see. For Union Raid, I'm gonna use number 345. And I noticed that you don't have bunny girls. Okay, so this is a rough account. Okay, I see. So we're gonna have to be creative right now. So you don't have novel, which is kind of like a really good core for this unit. So your best team, yeah, your Alice and Maxwell are pretty good. So this is the kind of like the older comp before the bunny girls were kind of like existed. This is just right before it. Even though you already have enough charge speed on Alice, it's not like you want to I want to move your other team somewhere. The downside on this team is it doesn't have a healer. And if you end up needing a tank or a healer against the boss, you could try your luck with Diesel. Why not Dala? Because Dorothy and Privity is enough as your cooldown reduction. So just level 2 on the cube. You need a level 5 burst on Adme. But if you can get it to... If you have level 7 resilience cube, you would only need level 3 on her burst to get the 110% reload. And I believe the 110% is the infinite ammo Alice. So with resilience level 6, between level 3 to level 6, you need the level 5 Adme. But if it's resilience level 7 onwards, then you only need level 3 on her burst with Privity's skill 1 at level 10. If you run Adme with Alice, he doesn't have a lot of options. There's no bunnies here. Yeah, like, listen, not everyone has every character, boys. So this is the best Alice that you could do. You can swap out Maxwell and go with this fire. So if you're against like a boss that is weak against fire, you could do this. Actually, with this team, then you can remove Adme actually, and you can slot in Rupee here, or if you need like a tank, you could use Diesel as your tank. Uni is actually not a bad option to consider for if you need like a healer, because there is like yeah, this one allows you to charge with allies. So if you need like just tiny bit of healing, you could also use this. This is actually not the worst. It really depends on what kind of type of healing you do, because Quincy also works as a healer, also as a B2. So this is one of the ways that you can be still offensive, and you're just gonna be swapping based on your like healing needs. It can be Diesel, it can be Quincy, it can be Uni as your B2 kind of like healers, quote unquote. So you could use these as like your thing. And the main reason why we want to use against fire effective is because your Drake has like 43%, 46, 47% elemental damage. That is a pretty good amount. So you don't want to. That's a pretty good value against. So that's only if you're against like a boss that is weak against fire. You can do that. But by default, because this Union Raid, there is no fire weak boss. These are the Union Raid things. There is no fire weak boss. Then you don't need to build like a fire, very exclusive fire team. Then I would just go with this instead. I'd probably just go to something a little bit more offensive. Yeah, this is on a team that I think you can only really build. Yeah, this is probably the your team 1. If you end up needing a healer, you can swap out Maxwell actually. So it really depends. If you end up needing a healer, you can swap out Maxwell and add Helm. And the thing is, like, your Alice is gonna be fine because she has enough charge speed so she can be solo. I would still definitely, so you could do this if you end up needing a healer, or you could also remove this, put Maxwell in, remove this, and pick the ones that the 3 same options: Uni, Diesel, Quincy. These are your offensive B2s or defensive B2s. Quincy can end up being kind of like a pseudo healer. If you guys are not familiar, she actually increases the max HP, and increasing max HP where it increases the max HP along with the current HP actually ends up being kind of like a pseudo heal. If you guys are not aware, those are kind of like your good options to do that. So yeah, I think if you want a little bit more offensive, I think this is probably the good team. This is. Let's move on to the next team, which is your Modernia Scarlet. And since you kind of have Modernia Scarlet, and I would probably just go with this. Probably. So it depends based on your team tree. If, for example, you end up using Helm instead, like for example, if your Quincy heal is not enough, or Diesel being a solo tank is not enough, or your uni, if none of these three bursts that are defensive are enough, then I would swap in Helm instead of Maxwell. Then in that situation, you can delegate Maxwell into here instead, and I would do something like this. So here's the thing, right? We also don't know if you end up needing a healer here. So that's gonna be another thing. Diesel could also be, again, the three defensive units that you could use here: Uni, Diesel, Quincy. Those are the three defensive burst 2s that you could use, and it's gonna vary depending on how much healing you're gonna need. So you're just gonna have to figure it out on the fly in the Union raid. Now let's assume that you use Maxwell in that situation, then I would go probably with this. For this team, if you need a little bit more offensive, but if you need something healing or defensive, then I would definitely consider Diesel or Quincy here. I believe Diesel would be the better choice because Diesel also has an ammo reload, which will benefit your Modernia. And yeah, these three would benefit. So this is probably the more defensive ideal scenario. But okay, before we do that, I would definitely start looking into your third team. So now your third team could actually vary depending on what you need. So if you, by default, this is probably the best one. Depending on the boss, you could use different ones. Laplace or Vesti are both good against Chatterbox. You could do this team also. The 5-second team comp. Depends if you're gonna end up needing like a healer or something. Let me see. Actually, you have a flex healer. Oh yeah, okay. Good. You have Rapunzel here. So like if you end up needing a healer, you can slap a Rapunzel here. So you're gonna keep moving characters depending on like what you end up needing, right? Personally, I would try to use your team 3 first, and then from there you can like use different. You can free up different units, so it's gonna vary. So let's look at the bosses that are available, right? So here are the bosses. Laitance and Chatterbox do have, and also Mother Whale. You could use this team. You could use this team. So it depends on which boss you end up being on. Sinister and Rebuild Vulcan. You could do this team instead. So for Rebuild Vulcan, you can do this. And the reason for that is because Rebuild Vulcan has only 2 parts, and I believe they do not respawn. And Sinister, you can do a full shotgun team like this, and this is fine if you're using full shotgun, kind of like this. And when you end up doing this on Sinister, you can replace Drake with like Helm or something like that. And when you use Helm, then you can go a little bit more offensive, like Rupee here, because you can do this. Or actually, you could also do Mask. So I guess you'll just have to test which one ends up being a stronger defense on that. I think Rebuild Vulcan might have parts in it. Yeah, see, you might lose consciousness if you don't break its outer casing. In order to have a chance winning, you should aim to break it quickly or from a close distance. So this is telling you to destroy the body parts. So that's the Rebuild Vulcan. And so that's why you want to you could use, you could have like a mix of this. You could have a mix of this. And Laplace should help like destroy the parts and AoE them also. So that's how I would probably do that in Rebuild Vulcan. In Sinister, if you end up with Sinister, then I would go with a little bit more full shotgun. Sinister though has a core shot weakness, but in terms, I would build you a core shot, but you don't really have like a team that would, other than guillotine. You have guillotine here, but otherwise like it's kind of hard to set you up with like a core shot specialized, which is AR slash machine gun. If you end up with Sinister, you could try this. You could try this. That's another, yeah, you could try this or with Maiden. Just see which one you end up dealing more damage with. It's gonna be variance. The Sinister is weak to iron, so it's not a bad thing to try to Lapus. See, here's the thing. Like, also, like your Snow White. You know, I would recommend people with Snow White, but who don't have like invested Snow White, so we're not gonna be using that. You could argue that Laplace is elemental. So if you end up having high elemental damage, if you ended up overloading Laplace and have multiple elemental damage, then you can also use her for Sinister. It's not a bad thing to worth a shot to try. Now for the other three comps, Laitance, Chatterbox, and Mother Whale. Now that one is, these are weak against, these bosses are weak against multiple target hits, and so this is where rocket launchers would shine. So you could do, as I showed you, you could try doing the 5-second burst comp, which is this time. This is the 5-second burst comp, by the way. If you end up needing like a healer, then you can drop Laplace and try putting in, let's see what you have as a healer. If you end up needing a healer, so try to be a little bit more offensive like this first. Right, I'll try to be offensive like this, and if you end up needing a healer, then I would swap out volume for Pepper then, and then try to do this team comp where you have your do this, yeah, something like this, and you can slot in Sugar or Drake. It's gonna vary from, yeah, so I would choose between Drake or Sugar on that regard, because like if you end up being at the higher level and you end up like needing a healer, then you can technically like replace Drake with Helm here. So you're gonna have to check on this whether what you're gonna do, and just look back at the VOD if you're confused. But there's definitely, these are so many different team comps, right? And like I showed you, it's gonna vary depending on which boss you're gonna target. But Laitance have a lot of parts, Chatterbox has a lot of parts, Mother Whale has a lot of parts. Rocket launchers are good against them, so that is definitely something to consider. Mother Whale, you can completely do the fight without needing a healer, so that is something to consider as well. Another thing to consider is there's an elite phase where actually like Diesel is enough with her full burst. If you full burst when the elites like charge up, you could also kind of do this as well. And yeah, you're gonna have to like play around with that team comp. Your third team is gonna be flex depending on the boss. These ones are kind of like, they're gonna be able to a little bit more free on this team 2, team 3, and team 4. They're kind of doable. You can use them on pretty much against any boss in this situation. Now let's talk about the other bosses also, because you do have other bosses, and these other bosses, it's pretty easy really. Just look at this one, look at the weakness. Wind, weak against wind, so Guilty, Noir would be good here. Same with Rebuild Vulcan, weak against wind. D is also pretty good, but you know, that's gonna depend if you have like an invested D or not. And then you have Sinister. You can use your Snow White team here for other people that have invested Snow White. You can use Snow White team here, and actually you can use Snow White team on any team. So this is more me just talking about for other people that are tuning in. And so the Snow White team is, I think you have Novel here and Rapunzel here, and you can slap them on any team. And if you don't need a healer, just replace Rapunzel with like some other units. So it could be LaPlus, it could be Julia, I don't know, whoever gives you, or Drake. Some people would ask like, where would we put our bunny team? And if you have 99% or higher charge speed on your Alice, you can put in the bunny with this. But if you don't have bunnies, then you would probably do this with Novel instead. Alice with Maxwell and then Novel. And then you could do Litter instead also. That's another thing. Litter and then Rapunzel and then Novel instead. There's definitely a lot of flex on different situations, different teams, different builds, and it's just gonna vary whether you have like this team set for it. But yeah, this is probably kind of like the default. Another default popular Alice team comp is like this with Novel. And then you can also do this with Novel. So that's how I would set up my teams. These are kind of like the defaults. Team 1 and Team 2 are very flexible on any boss that you can use. And then this one is like, as you just go back to the VOD and see the different types. Obviously, if you have like the Electro team with recently masked, that's popular. You have Scarlet and Guillotine and then masked. That's probably one of the best times to test it out. Mother Whale right here, because you have Electro team. Chatterbox is this is where I would use the Dorothy team with Alice and Privity. So Dorothy will deal good damage also, along with Alice doing hits on the Chatterbox, multiple hits on Chatterbox pieces here. And then Laitance also, yeah, this team is very flexible on pretty much all bosses, really, if I have to be very specific here. But yeah, that is your Union Raid team comps. Go ahead and play around with this. Is there any other units that I didn't talk about? Because this right now we're kind of doing some account reviews here. Yeah, you don't have Guilty. Yeah, you don't have the Bunny Girls, unfortunately, and Novel, same thing. But I did address those. If you don't have Rapunzel, a good substitute is Summer Mary. So for a lot of people, that's another substitute. Oh, another defensive unit that I didn't talk about enough is Makima. Makima is another defensive unit that you could use on Burst 2 as a solo B2. So here's the thing also, right? Chatterbox will have likely regenning body parts, but then these other bosses are likely not gonna have. Rebuild Vulcan is likely not gonna have a regenning body part, and so Alice and Snow White are not gonna be as efficient. So that's something to consider. And Laitance is likely not gonna have recovering body parts as well. Sinister doesn't have body parts, but if you have like Iron team comp, that's another thing. You can use Snow White also in Chatterbox and Snow White also in Mother Whale. That's these are different things that you can use on. That's how you build up, and I think that's just our preliminary, and obviously we're not going to be able to really fully figure things out in terms of until the actual battle is going to happen, because I think they're probably going to be making some like changes on how we're going to approach it. Maybe it's for higher level people, you might not end up needing a healer. Actually, there's also that chance, so that is something to consider as well. These are kind of like my preliminary thoughts before Union Raid. that is the account redeem for Yanni's. Thank you for sharing your account to us for us to review. And for those that are watching this in YouTube form, go ahead and start watching the stream. If you want to get your account review, you can start watching the stream, start earning points, join us in our prediction wars, whether we decide if we get any rocks today, what tier 9 manufacturer today. If you go here, check the points out, how to earn pudding points. Look, watch for 5 minutes, blah blah blah. Oh, by the way, look at this amazing tier 1 sub 1.2 times points multiplier. Tier 3 2 times. 2 times. Yo, imagine being a tier 3 sub. Wow. Efficient point. Yeah, exactly. If you're not tier 3, you're not efficiently earning. God dang it. To be fair, another points that you could do is the gacha pool. So if you don't want the account review, but you want your Mr. Streamer to suffer with 200,000 points. But, you know, hey, listen, if you're watching this way later down the road, we might get inflation. I'm just saying, there are possibilities of inflation. Streamer will do a 10 pull on the gacha banner of choice of whichever gacha game he plays. But that's okay. Some people probably ask, like, am I gonna pull for their account or my account? It's my account. Okay. But you can force me to pull on a banner that I don't want to pull anymore. That's how we got Core 7D. Yo, is this when we say, don't forget to click like and subscribe and leave a comment down in the comment section below? And then check my Twitch. We'll be streaming Union Raid live. I expect hundreds of you during Union Raid, boys.